Hello, Just Saying Nation, and welcome back to a brand new YouTube video. I'm Jairus, and as always, I'm joined by.
Shay!
That's right. And we got a spectacular video for you today on the back of the Eagles being your Super Bowl champions.
Hell yeah, baby.
We are going to finally be doing our NFL letter grades for the entire season, ranking every single team from A through F. Long overdue.
There might be some disagreement here, so that's why we have, as usual, our two-tier list here. And we'll go over their records a little bit, how they did in their own division, across the league as a whole, if they made the playoffs or not. And, have some discussion, a little bit of discussion, our own opinions, and, maybe it'll be a fist fight at the end. You never know, because it'll get heated.
Oh yeah, I'll be really mad if you don't agree with every single thing that I have to say. But real quick, just to explain a little bit, my tier list will be on the left, and I'll try not to mess it up this time. Shay's will be on the right, which is the one I'm not trying to mess up like I usually do. So yeah, record, overall league standing, playoff miss or when they were eliminated, how they did in their division, and their pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. With all that being said, A through F, every team going in alphabetical order. We start with A. Might not be ranked as an A, but we have the Arizona Cardinals. They finished 8-9 overall as their record, 20th overall in the league, third in the NFC West. They did miss the playoffs, and they hold the 16th pick in the NFL draft. So right smack in the middle.
Right in the middle. Are you going to go first? Or you want me to go first?
You can go first. Ladies first.
Huh. Interesting. I will say the Cardinals looked better than their record suggested. I'd say they beat some expectations. Not that they were world beaters and looked amazing, but I think they were better than definitely the last couple of years. And Kyler Murray played better. So and plus they got Marvin Harrison Jr. So I'm gonna put the Cardinals right smack dab in the middle as a C ranking for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Cardinals, I think, had an average season, but there were some good signs there. Like you said, Kyler Murray, James Conner had a great year. They have Marvin Harrison Jr. They did look really good in the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Had the driver's seat to potentially win their division, but they did what the Arizona Cardinals usually do, and they kind of faded a little bit late into the season. So they end up missing the playoffs, but I think there's some encouraging signs with this team going forward. A team that maybe not does not have encouraging signs going forward is our next team, the Atlanta Falcons. 8-9 record, 17th overall in the league. They missed the playoffs. They were second in the NFC South, and they hold the 15th pick in the NFL Draft. For the Falcons, there were definitely bigger expectations than the Cardinals, for sure. Signing Kirk Cousins to that massive contract. You're hoping Kyle Pitts could get back to form. Drake London looked pretty good, their first round selection from a couple years ago. But they had the grip on the division, then they lost. I think both of their games at the end of the year. So they end up missing the playoffs, and I think overall it was just a disappointment. So based on expectations and just how the overall season went, Kirk Cousins really faded late. He was benched for Michael Penix Jr. I got to give the Atlanta Falcons a D.
Yeah, I am actually gonna agree with you. Pretty much everything you said. Now, reports late last year were during the playoffs were saying that the Falcons are now going to get rid of Kirk Cousins and just cut him entirely. before he makes extra money on some day in March, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's like a signing bonus of like $10 million or something like that.
Yeah, so I think it was not a good season for Falcons fans because they did not perform to what they expected. But I think Michael Penix Jr. did show some promising signs for the future, and they still have Bijan Robinson in the backfield and Drake London and all that. So we'll see. It was also Raheem Morris's first year as head coach with the Falcons, so we'll see how they bounce back.
Yeah, and even with Kirk Cousins, you kind of hope that maybe he could find another team and that he could somehow rebound to somewhat of his form as a Viking, because you got to think that injury, this Achilles injury that he suffered, might have affected his skill on the field.
Yeah, it could have.
So we'll see what happens. But moving on to the Baltimore Ravens, they finished 12-5 as their record, 6th overall in the league. They were eliminated in the divisional round. They were first, though, in the AFC North, and they had the 27th overall pick in the draft.
With the Ravens, Lamar, an MVP caliber year, as we talked about in our last episode of Just Saying of the podcast. He probably easily could have won MVP if not for Josh Allen. He had a better year this year than he did last year when he won the award. Obviously, the addition of Derrick Henry was huge for them. Him and Lamar feeding off of each other was great. Zay Flowers had another fantastic year, and their defense, showed up as Baltimore Ravens defenses usually do. But they once again lose in the playoffs. So, with that being said, and the record and leading to AFC North again, I'm going to say they're a B team.
B for Baltimore.
If it was just the regular season, they would absolutely be an A team. But because they got knocked out again in the playoffs, until they get it done and win some games in the playoffs, I think they're going to be a B team.
Yeah, I agree with you again.
Unfortunately for them, the AFC is just so stacked with teams that it's harder on the AFC than it is the NFC.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I think you pointed out perfectly. Any questions now with Lamar, it's not how he performs in the regular season, how the team performs in the regular season. It's all about the playoffs now. Until Lamar and the Ravens win the playoffs, this is going to be the talk for years until they get it done. Controversial MVP pick over Lamar, and kind of in the same situation as the Ravens, are the Buffalo Bills. Possibly more of a heartbreaking loss to the Chiefs, for sure. But overall in the regular season, they finished 13-4, had an incredible year after a lot of questions after the offseason. 5th overall in the league. They were eliminated in the AFC Championship game, but they finished first in the AFC East, and they hold the 30th overall pick in the draft. For the Bills, even though they lost to the Chiefs, because of the expectations that were had after the offseason, how we thought that this team was going to regress, and we all know how good Josh Allen is, and he is the MVP, but still, what did he have around him? Was he going to have any help? Even though they lost in the playoffs, I think it's an easy A for the Bills. They exceeded all expectations, even though most heartbreaking fashion, 4th time in a row to the Chiefs in the playoffs. It's still, I think, a great season for the Bills, and I really hope that they can build on it.
Yeah, we are in agreement once again. They're in a similar situation as the Ravens, as you said, but the expectations were not good for Buffalo going into the year. As you said, a lot of questions, and Josh Allen improved remarkably. Even though he was already great, he didn't turn the ball over very much finally. So he had his best season of his career, and the Bills defense, even though they lost so many key players, definitely showed up, especially in the key moments. But once again, just couldn't do anything to beat the Chiefs. Couldn't beat the Chiefs, but I agree. They are definitely in the A tier and surprised almost everybody.
Myself included. I was not a believer, so they proved me wrong. Sorry, Jake.
I did have them winning the division.
You did. And, even maybe towards the end of this video, we'll look back at our regular season standings, see who won. Moving on to the next team, the Carolina Panthers. They finished 5-12 in the regular season, 25th overall. They obviously missed the playoffs. They finished third in the NFC South, and they have the 8th pick in the NFL draft. Even though they still had a poor record, and halfway through the season, it was not looking good. Bryce Young was benched for Andy Dalton, who had some great games. I think, maybe propped up his trade value for the offseason. Maybe a team, or actually no, the Panthers re-signed him. So good for him for keeping his job. But after all that, Bryce Young looked really good. Looked like the Bryce Young that we saw in Alabama. So even with the poor record, they're in the middle of a rebuild, and they did have some key injuries especially on their defense. So I am going to go with C. I think it was a good step in the right direction, and maybe it's something that they can build off of.
Yeah, I also agree. Once again, it not really much more else to say except after Bryce got benched, he played a lot better, and they definitely showed some flashes. And next year, I think they could at least be a thorn in the side of the Bucks and the Falcons to try and win the division.
Yeah. Now the next team we thought was going to make the playoffs.
Yep.
Through the first 6 weeks, they were 4-2, but overall, they finished 5-12. 24th overall. The Chicago Bears missed the playoffs. They were last in the NFC North, and they hold the 10th pick in the NFL draft. Jay, what's the verdict?
For me, I think they deserve an F. I know Caleb Williams, obviously a rookie, so it's not necessarily his fault. And he actually just had a pretty decent year and didn't really turn the ball over. But you build the team around him, and especially in the offseason, sign these weapons to help him, but don't do anything for the O-line, so then he becomes the most sacked rookie quarterback in all of NFL history. Like, what are we doing? And then on the defensive side, couldn't stop anything. So I think it was just a complete failure of the front office, the GM, and the head coach, which, they got rid of Matty Eberflus. So it was not at all what Bears fans were expecting, that's for sure. But I think most people, I understand Caleb is a rookie again, and maybe some people didn't have them making the playoffs, but we're certainly going to look better than they did, because it was ugly.
Yeah, perfectly said, and I do agree with you again. I think they deserve an F. Even though you could qualify them as a rebuilding team, you might disagree with us. But going into this season, Caleb Williams had probably the best setup for a rookie quarterback that we have seen ever, at least in a long time.
Agreed.
With that, after that 4-2 start, it looked great. They were in the strongest division in all of football. But after that catch, man, in the Washington Commanders game,
the Hail Mary.
How one game can just change the course of a franchise.
It's crazy.
Two franchises that went in completely different directions.
Yeah.
Coach gets fired. Found out, he can't save his timeouts for the next game. I just think everything that went wrong for the Bears did, and not so much the players, but like you said, the front office, I think, really dropped the ball.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think they definitely deserve an F. And the punter hopefully won't be punting as much.
Yeah.
Moving on, unfortunately, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. Very, very, very disappointing season. Very disappointing. 9-8 overall is their record. 16th overall in the league. They obviously missed the playoffs. Third in the AFC North. Sorry, and they hold the 17th pick in the NFL draft. Now, I don't want to, but you had MVP caliber season from Joe Burrow.
Yep.
Triple crown winning receiver in Jamar Chase.
Yep.
Trey Hendrickson, arguably this season might have been the best edge rusher. 17 and a half sacks.
Yep.
Finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. Heavy expectations coming into the season. The front office did not do anything to address the issues on the defense and the O-line, like it has been that way for the past few years. I think you gotta fail them. I really do. I really hate to do it, but you cannot waste a prime year like that from Burrow and Chase. You just can't. Like, that is just absolute blasphemy.
I'm a little surprised you gave him an F. I've been teetering between a D and an F. But I think it's an F as well.
I was thinking about giving him a D, but just the season that the offense had.
Yeah, their record and stuff was not
ended up being
indicative.
just the middle of the road.
Yeah, it's not indicative of what you would think would be an F ranking. However, you wasted a career year for Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and Trey Hendrickson, and still had T. Higgins and Mike Gesicki had a breakout year with them as their tight end.
And all of them are free agents right now.
Yeah, it's
Like-
just goes to the front office, the management. It's just they shot themselves in the foot. So
Yeah.
now they, as we talked about in our last podcast episode, they have a very important offseason, and I have no idea what they're going to do.
That's even so, like, why I give them an F. Not just for the season that they had, because now looking towards next year and the year after, they have so many important free agents to sign.
Yep.
So, like, are they going to be able to keep everybody around, or is like this is it?
Yeah.
And they didn't even have the opportunity to make a run.
No.
I mean, they won 5 straight at the end of the year. They almost made it. But they couldn't control their own destiny, and now they get a mid first round pick.
Yep.
So are they even going to get a quality player to help them out? So yeah, I really think you have to go with an F. Same with the Cleveland Browns, and
I think it's pretty.
it's not as
self-explanatory.
much of a surprising F as maybe the Bengals.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Cleveland Browns, I think right now are just the most disastrous franchise in the NFL, with no question.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing else to say. It's Deshaun Watson. They're stuck with him, and there's
When you have fans openly cheering that your quarterback, your star quarterback that you traded for, got hurt for the rest of the season, that says a lot.
yes, yeah,
Nothing really else to be said.
No.
But just going over the stats, because why not beat a dead horse? They were 3-14 overall is their record, 30th overall in the league. They obviously missed the playoffs. They were 4th in the AFC North, and they had the 2nd overall pick in the NFL draft, which might be the only positive.
yeah.
So moving on to the Cowboys.
That's right.
How about them boys?
That's right.
People. For the Cowboys, 7-10 overall is their record, 21st in the league. They missed the playoffs, 3rd in the NFC East, and they hold the 12th pick in the draft. Do we give them an F too?
Do you give them an F?
I mean, with the expectations, Mike McCarthy is now gone. Dak did get hurt,
Dak
he's-
and Micah were both hurt.
But
yeah.
he signed that massive contract, and when he played, he did not look good. I, hmm. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll give him a D. I'll give him a D because I might know where you're going. But yeah, the key injuries I think is the only reason though that I'm gonna give him a D. Other than that, I think their season was a disaster.
Yeah, no, it's an F all the way. Got rid of Mike McCarthy. Jerry Jones is completely delusional and out of touch with what his team actually needs. Dak, I do like Dak. He got hurt, so obviously it wasn't necessarily his fault because he was out for a majority of the season. Micah Parsons was also hurt on the defensive side, and CeeDee Lamb got hurt halfway through, so they had to deal with star injuries. But especially with Dallas expectations, it was a dumpster fire. So
I knew where you were going with, so
Yeah.
I was like, you know what, I'll
yeah,
be the one to give him a little bit of sympathy. But moving on to the next team, the Denver Broncos. They were 10-7 overall of the record, 14th overall in the league. They were eliminated in the wild card round. They were finished third in the AFC West, and they hold the 20th overall pick in the draft. I don't think it's that much of a debate. I think it's an easy A. They made the playoffs for the first time since 2015. After a so-and-so start, Bo Nix really broke out, proved that he could be the franchise quarterback of the future. And yeah, I think they exceeded all expectations. Sean Payton, I think, is a good coach. And yeah, so let's see if they can build on it next year.
I am gonna put them in the B tier. They definitely defied all expectations. Sean Payton is not just a good coach; he's a Hall of Fame coach. Bo Nix, as you said, really broke out after a so-and-so start. He's definitely Denver's quarterback. And the fact that they were able to do what they did, cap restricted, thanks to Russell Wilson's contract, is definitely incredible. However, I think the expectations were slightly higher than, let's say, like the Bills' expectations. The Bills went farther into the playoffs, obviously, too. But people trust Sean Payton to turn this team around, especially from where they were 2 years ago. And he's certainly done that and made the right quarterback choice with the draft pick of Bo Nix last year, for sure. So I don't think they're A tier, only because obviously there's still room to grow and improvement, but they surprised everybody.
Yeah, I don't disagree with your ranking, for sure. I'm not gonna overreact. Like, I don't expect them to go on a huge playoff run next year. Obviously.
I don't know. I think they could get
maybe.
to the AFC Championship. I really could.
So we'll see what happens for next year, especially with that defense.
Mm-hmm.
Pat Surtain, great year, defensive player of the year.
Yeah.
So yeah. Moving on to the Detroit Lions. Lions is tough, man. They were 15-2 as their record, first overall in the league, but they were surprisingly, or not surprisingly, eliminated in the divisional round. They were first in the NFC North, the strongest division in football, and they were 28th. They have the 28th pick in the NFL draft. It's just because they had so many injuries, especially on defense, that I can't put them as like a low grade.
No.
But in my opinion, getting eliminated, and this is not like a knock on the Commanders, but getting eliminated to like a supposedly rebuilding franchise like they did, and Jared Goff's performance, I know it's not on one guy because we're ranking teams, but for that, I'm going to give them a B. They did have the best regular season in franchise history, and it's like I said, it's tough because with the injuries, but I still think it was slightly disappointing, but not like entirely in their control.
Yeah, I think they're in the B tier as well. Only because of their injuries. They were just so decimated, especially on the defensive side. Going into the playoffs, they had 16 players out on defense alone. So unfortunately for Lions fans, this was supposed to be the year, but we kind of have to just wash our hands clean with this one. And hey, the season was a wash. Nothing we can do because in the playoffs, their injuries caught up to them, and the Commanders' offense, which is one of the more explosive offenses in the league, just ate them up. So I don't think it's disappointing, yeah, that you didn't go farther, but the fact that you got that far and were the best team on record in the NFL is pretty incredible.
Yeah. Dan Campbell, good coach.
Yeah.
Just a good coach. No, he's one of the best coaches in the league, and he's the guy that can get them there, no doubt.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Green Bay Packers, who had a good year. They were 11-6 in their record, 9th overall in the league. They were eliminated though in the wild card round. They were 3rd in the NFC North, and they have the 23rd pick in the draft. Now with the Packers, it's they signed some key free agents. They brought in Aaron Jones after letting go of Josh Jacobs.
No, other way around. They brought in Josh Jacobs.
So they brought in
let
Josh
go Aaron
Jacobs.
Jones.
Yeah. Sorry. It's tough because I couldn't really know how to gauge the Packers. I thought Jordan Love had a good year, but that playoff game, he did not do good. I think they were in a really tough division. Right? So I think even though they had a disappointing exit, I think kind of same with the Lions. I think I'm going to give them a B, but I think for me it's teetering a little bit on the C. Also with that like wide receiving core, I think they really need like a number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs absolutely helped them for sure. He was a huge piece in the offseason that only benefited them. And Jordan Love did have a good year until the playoffs. But I would say they're a C team. They're not too spectacular, but not too terrible. I think definitely Packers fans are pretty disappointed with how it all ended. They expected better. But at the same time, I don't think people were expecting a Super Bowl either. So I think it's just right down the middle. Like, it was an all right season. Let's just move on to the next one.
Yeah, I think I'll change. I think I'll do C as well. I don't know if I could put them on the same level as the Ravens.
No, I couldn't.
Yeah, so teetering on a C. So yeah, I think it's a C. Again, it was really hard to kind of gauge where they were at for me, at least. So we'll see. We'll see though how they do next year. Moving on to the Texans, Houston Texans, 10-7 record, 12th overall, eliminated in the divisional round. They were first in the NFC South, but it was kind of by default. And they hold the 25th overall pick in the draft. Now, the Texans were also a very hard team to gauge. Mm-hmm. They were inconsistent all year. They had a cakewalk division, like pretty much right to the finish line. But in the playoffs against the Chargers, I thought they had a very impressive victory, especially with the defense. And C.J. Stroud had his best game of the season in the big moment. But they did lose in the divisional round to the Chiefs.
Yep.
but it is the Chiefs. So overall, Stroud did have a sophomore slump. Overall, um, I think it was a slight step back. So I think I'm going to put him in the C tier as well. But I think they can bounce right back next year and do a lot better.
I was thinking about putting them in the D tier because they had very high expectations coming into the year. However, they lost Stephon Diggs very early for the whole year. They lost Tank Dell to gruesome injury.
Yeah.
Nico Collins was out for a while. Joe Mixon was out for a bit. So they were like, they just had a lot of injuries on the offensive side that CJ Stroud did have a sophomore slump. Not that the injuries were the sole reason. Like, he didn't play as good as he did his rookie year, but I was teetering on that, but because of the injuries to star key players that would have absolutely helped. And the defense was not as good as it was under DeMeco Ryans' first year. I'm going to give him a C too. I was going to give him a D, but because of the massive injuries, I'm going to give him, the benefit of the doubt.
I have to think too, like, because of that such impressive rookie year with CJ Stroud, that might have set the bar like a little too high.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe that they just couldn't meet. But I agree. Like, I think he did have a sophomore slump, but I think they can bounce right back, hopefully with everyone getting healthy for next year. So moving on to the Indianapolis Colts. They were 8-9 overall, 18th in the league. They missed the playoffs. They were second in the AFC South, and they have the 14th pick in the draft. I think for the Colts, it was a disappointing year. I think Anthony Richardson just has not developed. He has flashes that he can be that franchise quarterback, but when he got benched because he said he was tired.
Well, he took himself out of the game, and then he got benched after that.
Yeah, that's not a good way to go towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I think for the Colts, I don't think it was a failure of a season, but I mean, going into this season, were they expected to be a playoff team?
They're expected to be a fringe playoff team, which is kind of how they, I guess, ended up. But the expectations for Anthony Richardson were definitely better.
I think just because Anthony Richardson hasn't taken that next step, I think it might be kind of a failure.
Jonathan Taylor did have a good resurgence this past year as their star running back. But their defense did not play well. The rest of the offense didn't play well. And most importantly, the most important position in sports, your quarterback, took himself out of a game because he was tired. And that cannot happen.
That's not good.
That is everyone gets tired, but bro, you're making millions of dollars in, again, the most important position in all of sports, and you needed a breather. To me, that just says it all right there. And I don't know. Maybe he said he learned from it, obviously, and said all the right things afterwards. But this year is going to be his third year in the league. Obviously, his rookie year he only played 4 games and then was hurt. But this year, I think, even though it's only year 3, he still technically has 2 years left on his rookie deal. Is going to be pretty much make or break.
Yeah, you might be being too harsh.
Don't give a fuck.
Maybe. I
That's
said maybe.
that's just what I think.
Yeah. But this next team, we're not being too harsh on at all. Because we got the Jacksonville Jaguars up next. Just a disaster of a season. And I predicted it. We both did. So maybe not so much of a surprise, but they had a 4-13 record after most people were picking them to win the division and potentially make a run to the championship game. 27th overall in the league. They obviously missed the playoffs. They finished third in the AFC South, which is kind of a minor miracle. And they hold the 5th overall pick in the NFL draft. F. Duval.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, Doug Peterson's gone, your GM's gone, and Trevor Lawrence, oh God, he better have a good year, because
This is the last year.
It's
Like,
not
he's had plenty of time
Yeah.
to get it together.
There's just nothing really
We're
else
going,
to say.
what,
It's an F.
year 4, year 5?
Yeah.
At that point, you got signed this massive contract. Like, either you live up to it, or the Jags have set their franchise back years.
Just not a good year.
So, not much else to be said. They obviously cleaned house. Sorry, Doug Peterson, but you just did not establish the winning culture.
Nope.
So, we'll see with Liam Cohen, but 0-17, baby. First 0-17 game in NFL history. Let's go. Fuck ourselves. The next team, the Kansas City Chiefs. They're dethroned.
They are.
That's
Three-peat
right.
is over.
That's right. They were 15-2. They finished second overall in the league. They were eliminated in the Super Bowl in bewildering fashion. Finished first in the AFC West, and they hold the 31st pick in the draft, which hopefully Buffalo doesn't mess with.
Yeah.
Now, they made it farther than any other team has ever had in a three-peat bid.
They're still the Chiefs.
That defense,
Until the Super Bowl.
Spagnuolo.
Yep.
Right. Fantastic. But I think all year they were pretty much carried by their defense. Mahomes did not have a bad year, but by Mahomes standards, didn't have a great year.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, though, Mahomes does what he always does and shows up. Got all the way to the final game of the playoffs, but man, did they just get dismantled by the Eagles. So with that, it is a disappointing loss probably for Chiefs fans. It's a victory for probably the rest of the league.
Yeah.
But I think it's still a B-tier season for the Chiefs. Even though, they reached the Super Bowl, I could have put them in A, but I think maybe they weren't expected to three-peat, but yeah, I think the way they lost in the Super Bowl, I think kind of bumps them down for me, and also that Mahomes didn't have a fantastic year by his standards.
No, going off everything you just said, which I agree with all of it, they did lose in similar fashion to when Tom Brady beat them in the Super Bowl. Their O-line just could not handle the Bucs pass rush, and Mahomes couldn't be Patrick Mahomes. But then what happened the next year? Kansas City invested in their O-line, and Patrick Mahomes had a Patrick Mahomes year and season and Super Bowl, and they won the Super Bowl. We said all year, it's the Chiefs. The Chiefs are the Chiefs, and they certainly were all year until Super Bowl 59. But unless they lose again next year, they're still an A team for me. Especially because they keep beating the Bills. The Bills just can't beat them. Until they get beaten, until they lose a second Super Bowl, right? The dynasty it's still in the middle of their dynasty. It's not over yet, but they didn't look as good, obviously, this whole season compared to the seasons past, but they still won. It doesn't matter how bad you look. If you won, that's all that matters, and they did win. But yeah, I still think they're an A team. Obviously, Andy Reid, probably now the second greatest coach of all time, only behind Bill Belichick. Mahomes is obviously in the current GOAT situation. He's still the best quarterback of the current league, but I don't think quite yet they're out of that A tier.
I like that take. I do. And you got to think, if that defense keeps up what they've done and Mahomes rebounds to MVP Mahomes form, could we see like a 2004 Patriots reincarnation?
Yeah.
That's scary to think about. And you got to think too, because they lost, they might have just like pissed off a beast. So
Exactly.
I like that take. I do. Moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders. 4-13 record, 29th overall in the league that they placed. They missed the playoffs. They finished last in the AFC West, and they hold the 6th overall pick in the draft. I honestly think with the Raiders, the only bright spot on that team was Brock Bowers. And there's no amount of bad things that can be said.
No, not with him.
Not enough good things that can be said. That's what I was trying to say.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Broke almost every single record for a rookie tight end. Was a finalist for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Fantastic. Outside of that, I think the season was a disaster. I really do. They didn't take a step in the right direction. It's weird with the Raiders too, because like they'll have seasons where they look really good and it's like a feel-good story, and then they just go right back into mediocrity.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I don't want to fail like every team. I think they did suffer like key injuries, and they traded away Devontae Adams because he wanted out. They really need to fix that running game though. It's just non-existent. Josh Jacobs probably would have sufficed. Just saying.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give him a D. I don't want to fail him, I don't think, but definitely a disappointing season.
Well, I'm gonna fail him.
You're just handing out Fs.
I mean,
for fuck you.
Brock Bowers was literally the only bright spot. Got rid of Devontae Adams. Antonio Pierce is gone as head coach. Aiden O'Connell is definitely not the quarterback of the future, and they kept switching to like 4 different quarterbacks throughout the year. Max Crosby was hurt, missed most of the year, obviously, but besides that, like, it was just
fired Antonio Pierce.
Yeah,
at the end of the season.
Disappointing all the way around, and what was supposed to be maybe not a playoff team, but a step towards, okay, we're getting there. And it was, the opposite way. So, yeah, it was just a failure.
Man, Shay's just, you'd be a terrible teacher. Little kid walks up with a math test, like, here you go. Like, did I do good? You're like, no, fuck you. You failed. Failure. F. Like Mr. Crocker. He's like Mr. Crocker right now.
The truth hurts.
F. Hopefully, there's people that watch Fairly Odd Parents. I hope. Yeah. Moving on to the next team, the Los Angeles Chargers. Great year. Really good year. I think it was very encouraging. 11-6 record. They finished 8th overall in the league. They were eliminated, though, in the wild card round, but they finished 2nd in the AFC West, and they hold the 22nd pick in the draft. If you look at just the playoff game, and Herbert did not have a great game, the team did not have a great game, but with Jim Harbaugh as their coach, I think he can develop Justin Herbert into the next level. I have faith in that. I really like Justin Herbert as a quarterback, and he just seems like a great guy. So I really hope the Chargers build on this. Even though it was an early playoff exit, I think I think they had a good year. I'm not going to put them in, I don't think, B tier, but I think they had a pretty good year. So I just think a solid C.
Yeah,
and shout out to Lad McConkey.
Yeah, another phenomenal offensive rookie for sure. I am also going to put him. I was thinking about maybe B, but
I was teetering on a B.
I'm going to put him in C as well. Jim Harbaugh is a fantastic coach. People thought his first year the expectation was the playoffs. Well, he delivered. So I think the future's bright for the Chargers, and especially with what they did, losing a lot of pieces and not having any names on the receiving core until McConkey broke out. So I think it was a good year, a solid year, what they needed, and next year they could be even better.
Yeah. So now the next team is the other team in Los Angeles, the Rams. Which one is better? Depends on who you ask. Probably the Rams because they won a Super Bowl. But for the Rams, they had a 10-7 record. They finished 11th overall. They were eliminated in the divisional round, but they won their division first in the NFC West, and they have the 26th pick in the draft. They started out 0-4. We so many injuries. We thought they were dead, and it was like watching a zombie rise up from the grave.
Yeah.
Just I think an incredible season, just overcoming so much adversity, and they didn't go far, but they won. I think they did a lot better than what people were expecting. So for that, I'm gonna give them a B. I think they had a really good year. There are questions for the offseason. Is Matt Stafford going to retire? They already said they're looking to trade Cooper Kupp. So there are questions going into the offseason and beyond. But I think for this season, they were a really good team.
Yeah, I agree. I will give them a B too. They really turned the ship around and defied expectations. Matthew Stafford, still an elite quarterback, in my opinion, anyway. And, Puka Nacua is just Puka Nacua. And their star rookie, Jared Verse, whew,
Shit,
what a stud. Even though we, blew him up in Philly, but it's fine. Yeah,
they made you nervous at the end.
They did. They did. But no, just a really great season. Sean McVay, huge props to him. He's already one of the best coaches in the league, but after this, being able to turn the team around, they should feel, even though they might be losing Cooper Kupp, which is going to suck, they should still feel really good about where they're going.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I thought they were done, and then they just got resurrected. It was very impressive to watch. Moving on to the next team, the Miami Dolphins, 8-9 record, 19th overall. They missed the playoffs on the final game of the season, second in the AFC East, and they have the 13th overall pick in the draft. I just got to say, Dolphins, you guys are the most overrated fucking team in the league. You guys talk so much shit, and you guys cannot beat a team with a record of over 500 to save your lives.
Yep.
So that's all I gotta say. I think F. I know they had a lot of injuries, but it's just the same shit with this team over and over and over every single year. They bring in the big names, and they just cannot get it done. I think at this point, the coaching is overrated, and just everything overrated.
I agree for the most part, but I'm gonna give them a D. I'm not failing someone. Look at that.
Yeah, I actually failed someone.
I'm gonna give them a D. I think this season is gonna be McDaniel's prove it year. If it's another abysmal year or subpar year, he's gone. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle had a not so good year by their standards for sure. But Tua got another scary concussion and was gone for a while, and they lost without him. But then they started winning again with him coming back. But just because of Tua being out, and they do seem to win with him, it's just not against over 500 teams or in the playoffs. I'm gonna give him a D because I don't think Tua deserves a D.
I agree with you. I mean, Tua, I really hope like that he's just fully healthy. I hope he doesn't get any more injuries because I love Tua.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying what I said because I'm a hater of the Dolphins. Like I would love to see the Dolphins succeed because they have not been good for a long time. It's just out of frustration. Like I just expect this team to do something.
Yeah.
And it just has not happened. So you can hate on me, Dolphins fans. It's fine. Moving on to the next team. Might have been the most fraudulent team. Maybe. The Minnesota Vikings, 14-3 record with Sam Darnold at the helm, 4th overall in the league. They were eliminated, though, in the wild card round. They finished 2nd in the NFC North, and they held the 24th pick in the draft. It was hard to rank this team because I really thought 2022, right? Like, they had that great year, but they lost to the Giants. And we were like, man, these are the biggest frauds in the league. This year, even though they had Sam Darnold, he had an amazing year. And after the offseason that they had, you thought like they weren't even going to be a playoff team. It was kind of like a retool, rebuild year. But they exceeded all expectations.
Yeah.
And I really thought like, okay, they're for real. Like they could make a run to the big game. Unfortunately, in the biggest moment, Sam Darnold became Sam Darnold. And it sucked to watch. But because of the expectations they had, I can't put them up with like the Chiefs, I don't think, but I'll give them a C. Like I think they had a really good year. I don't know if they're going to bring Sam Darnold back, especially after the last couple games, but I think wherever he goes, I think somebody will definitely open the wallet for his services.
Yeah, Sam Darnold saved his career with this resurgence. Kevin O'Connell cannot get enough credit because he made this team that nobody expected to do anything get into the playoffs and almost get a first round bye. I don't know what I just did. I'm sorry.
Oh, just hit presentation mode. Hold on. Okay.
Okay.
Oof.
Oh, it copied your thing though.
Oh, hold on. Pause. You have the Raiders is failing. You have the Cowboys failing. You have the Dolphins in a D. Those were the only D teams you had. We agreed on all of these. Yeah, I think
No, it's good. Yeah.
right.
Okay.
We're back.
Sorry.
That'll be edited out.
The defense under Brian Flores was top notch until the end of the year, where they fell apart. But I am going to put them in the B tier. I have the Chiefs in the A tier, so they're not with the Chiefs according to me. But I'm going to put them in the B tier because they defied all expectations. Kevin O'Connell proved to be one of the best coaches in the league. And I think the future is bright, whether they bring Sam Darnold back or J.J. McCarthy's waiting in the wings coming back from his injury. So I don't think they're frauds. I don't. They proved until the end, obviously, they proved, yeah, we're a good team. And, of course, you have the best receiver in football, arguably, in Justin Jefferson. So, and Aaron Jones was also a huge addition.
Well, for the second time in the video, I'll give him to the pressure because I was teetering. I'll move him up to a B.
Okay.
You've changed me.
Okay.
I'm a changed man for the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, I mean, I kind of was just judging them on the last 2 games of the season, really, but they did have a pretty fantastic year with all things considered.
Yeah.
So I'll
At
move
one
them
point,
up.
they were the best team in
Yeah.
football.
Yeah, I'll move them up to a B. I agree. The New England Patriots. What to say about those Pats? They finished with a record of 4-13, so now they are back to the 90s Patriots. 28th overall in the league. They obviously missed the playoffs. They finished last in the AFC East, and they hold the 4th overall pick in the NFL draft, which hopefully they don't use to draft another wide receiver like Belichick would always do, or a defensive player.
Yeah.
Now they have a new voice as GM. But yeah, for the Patriots, I mean, we all knew this was coming. Like it was going to be a rebuilding year. Drake May, in his appearances, looked really good. Looked pretty good. Showed flashes. So I think with all things considered, I mean, even though Gerard Mayo kind of quote unquote screwed him out of the first overall pick and he's gone now, they brought in Mike Vrabel. I'll give him a D, but I don't think it's out of performance, but I think it's just because like we expected him to be bad.
Yeah, no one really expected them to do much. Gerard Mayo's gone, Mike Vrabel's in, and a lot of fan bases aren't happy because that could signal a return to form for the Patriots with the way Mike Vrabel coaches. Drake May, he in his moments, because he didn't get to play a whole lot, but he played a lot more towards the end of the season. Looked very good. He looked very good. They're not an F just because expectations were so low. I agree. Are they a D? Maybe even a C because
I was thinking about
Drake
putting him
May,
in the C. I was.
Drake May, and now Mike Vrabel, but that's after the season ended, so you can't really count him. I'll give him a D, just because it was still obviously disappointing, but I would not be surprised if the Patriots are back next year contending for the last wild card spot, let's just say.
Yeah, I agree. And really, I was thinking about putting him in the C, to be honest, because I did think there were some very encouraging signs.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I don't think the D is because of performance. I think just because they kind of were where we thought they were going to be.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Moving on to our next team, the New Orleans Saints. They finished 5-12 overall, 26th overall in the league. Missed the playoffs, 4th in the NFC South, and they hold the 9th overall pick. Man, those first 2 games, we really thought like, wow, the Saints had the number 1 offense.
Yep.
They beat the Cowboys. The other game was against the Panthers, but
And
still.
then they lost to the Eagles.
Yeah, and that started just a complete downward spiral.
Yep.
I think the only highlight for this team and the town was probably hosting the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They got rid of their coach. Forgot who their coach was, or Dennis Allen. They got rid of Dennis Allen.
They're stuck with Derek Carr because of his contract.
Yeah, and Alvin Kamara didn't have a fantastic year. I don't think he had a bad year.
No, he didn't have a bad year.
Yeah, I think just because like they were expected to take a step in the right direction, I think you got to fail. I do.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't think Derek Carr is the quarterback for them, but they are stuck with him. There's nothing they can do.
They also had like a quarterback carousel.
Yeah.
So Spencer Strider, the legend.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the Saints, a disappointing year, and honestly, I don't know if they can bounce back.
Yeah.
I don't.
They have Kellen Moore, so congrats to him. It sucks for us, the Eagles, but it's gonna be a couple year of rebuilding, I think.
Yeah. Another team that's in a rebuild is the New York Giants. As we all know, disastrous moves during the offseason. But for this season, they finished 3-14 as their record. Last in the league, missed the playoffs, obviously. Last in their division, last. But they didn't even get the number 1 overall pick. They finished 3rd in that regard. So they have a top 3 pick at least, so that's good. Daniel Jones is gone after signing that contract and choosing him over Saquon. He's not even with the team anymore. Malik Neighbors, great season for him.
He was a bright spot, yeah.
He's a really good rookie wide receiver. The defense was solid, I think. Some good pieces there as well. But other than that, like just because of the disastrous offseason they had, I think they are also a fail.
Yeah, I agree. The offseason just kind of set the tone of their whole season, basically. Thank you again for Saquon. I cannot say it enough. But it's kind of surprising Brian Dable is still there as their head coach and has a job, but he's still there after this year. Who knows? But it's not good over there, which is perfectly fine with me.
Yeah, not much else to be said about the Giants. And moving on to the New York Jets, they finished 5-12 in their record, 23rd overall in the league. Missed the playoffs, 3rd in the AFC East, and they hold the 7th overall pick in the draft. Disappointing year, really.
Mm-hmm.
So, where do you rank them?
They're an A team. No. Another F for me. A lot of people had them going to the Super Bowl, if not winning the Super Bowl, because Aaron Rodgers was back and healthy. And it was just chaos all the way around. Robert Saleh got fired. He's back with the 49ers as their defensive coordinator now. Aaron Rodgers, he hasn't decided if he's playing or retiring, obviously, but the Jets at least told him they're parting ways with him, going in a different direction. Besides him and Devontae Adams, like there was really nothing else that happened with this team. And Hassan Reddick's drama during the offseason, going into the season and missing the first 6 or 7 games, did not work out. So it was just a disaster all the way around. I think
the defense regressed. We thought that was going to be the bright spot.
They were the number 1 defense or top 5 defense, I think, last year, and it did not show. So I honestly have no idea what to do with them, other than they're in a rebuild once again in their franchise history. But Aaron, I think
endless rebuild.
Yeah, pretty much. I think Aaron, especially in the latter half of the year with Devontae, showed he can still spin it. He still has juice left in the tank, but he had no help. No help.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was also a failure of a season. I think really with all the fails, I don't think we're being too harsh. I think this really just speaks to the season as a whole. Like a lot of the teams we thought were going to do well, and not just us, like a lot of people just really dropped the ball.
Yeah, agreed.
And it was either due to injury or just not meeting expectations. But one team that just exceeded expectations, and they did have high expectations, but man, did they bounce back in a big way. And that is the Philadelphia Eagles, your Super Bowl champions. And Philly's on fire right now.
Hell yeah.
They finished 14-3 in the regular season, 3rd overall in the league, obviously won the Super Bowl, 1st in the NFC East, and they have the last pick in the NFL draft, obviously. Super Bowl winner is going to get an A. So
Yeah. This is an F team. They suck. No, I'm just kidding. There's nothing else to say. A team won the Super Bowl.
The best offseason, though.
Best offseason, arguably in NFL history, maybe even sports history. And they rebounded after going 2-2, had that bye week, and never looked back. So, go Birds, baby.
Jalen Hurts proved all the doubters wrong.
That's right.
Really did. All right, moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that is stuck in mediocrity. They finished though with a 10-7 record, so I'm blanking. Who's their coach?
Mike Tomlin.
So Mike Tomlin can continue his streak of finishing with a above 500 record. 13th overall in the league. They were eliminated in the wild card, which is a yearly tradition. Second in the AFC North, and they have the 21st pick in the draft. I kind of want to fail them because it's just the same stuff every single year with this team. They look great. They had the division at one point. Like, they controlled the division, and they lost like 5 out of 6 to piss it away. I think same with this with the Dolphins. Like, Steelers, like, I don't think the fans talk as much shit because they kind of know how Mike Tomlin is, but it's just the same thing every single year. It's like, what are we doing? Like, the worst place you can be in sports is stuck in mediocrity.
Yeah. I'm not going to fail them, though. I'm going to give them a D because it's very disappointing, once again. Russell Wilson did look good at the beginning and then kind of fell off towards the end. Justin Fields showed some of his flashes, but
Controversially, too, was taken out once Wilson came back, which I don't know if that was a good
Well,
move.
I mean, at first it was because Russell played really well. Really well his first few games and then kind of faded out. But they're moving on from Russell Wilson. They already said that. And the Justin Fields, they don't know if they're bringing him back yet or not. I just don't know how to fix this team, honestly. I don't know what they can do. They have fucking TJ Watt, for Christ's sake. Like, what more do you need on defense besides, they have another in Hainsworth on the D-line to help him out, or Highsmith, sorry. They have great corners, great secondary. Like, they're all there. But the defense was still good, but not Pittsburgh Steelers.
They can't do everything either.
No, and then just the offense was slightly better than under Matt Canada. That's for sure.
But that's a low bar.
But yeah, so it's just another year of winning record and then losing in the playoffs.
There might be some Bengals bias in my ranking, but we missed the playoffs and you guys made it, so can't really talk that much shit. Moving on, the San Francisco 49ers just derailed by injuries, really.
Mm-hmm.
This season was kind of a wash, just like the Lions. They finished 6-11 as their record, 22nd overall, missed the playoffs, last in the NFC West. I don't think anybody saw that coming. 11th pick in the NFL draft, so they do have a decent pick. Just with all the injuries, and again, I think a D is fine. Obviously, we're not a playoff team, so I can't quite put them there, and just with expectations, but man, the injuries just really killed them. So I think they're a D team, but I don't think it was much of anything like on their end that they could control. I mean, Deebo Samuel had a real down year. There's a lot of talk about him getting traded to save on cap space. Brandon Ayuk got knocked out. George Kittle was not healthy for a few games. Really, I mean, it was just kind of a wash.
Yeah, I agree. Give him a D too. Brock didn't play as well, but again, he had so many injuries to deal with. The defense, though, was probably the biggest disappointment, though, because they had guys come back from injury and were still not that good. And can't, of course, forget about Christian McCaffrey, who missed the entire year, basically, due to his injuries. Hopefully he's back next year. Because it sucks not having a league or having a league without Christian McCaffrey. But yeah, a D is, I think, pretty justified.
Yeah, and let's not forget too, this is the last year of Brock Purdy's rookie contract, and
Yep.
he's gonna get paid.
Oh, he deserves it.
Yeah, not without deservation. Is that a word?
I don't know.
Probably not. Moving on to the Seattle Seahawks, they finished 10-7, so they had a good record, 15th overall, but they missed the playoffs. Not only did they miss the playoffs, they missed the playoffs on a strength of schedule tiebreaker.
Yep.
Just, that's gotta hurt. Second in the NFC West, and they hold the 18th overall pick in the draft. They started out 3-0. They were cruising to the division lead, but that offense was just so inconsistent. Jackson Smith had a good year, really good year for them. Geno Smith, I thought, also had a good year for them, but just the inconsistency, I think, kind of did them in. But I think with expectations, I think they were a pretty middle of the road team. I think they did well for what they had, but definitely disappointing that they missed the playoffs in that fashion.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if they've kind of been this kind of similar to the Steelers team the last 2 or 3 seasons, where they can be good and they do play good sometimes, but then other times they don't. Geno Smith can have the highest passer rating in the league and look really good, but then he can also throw 4 picks in a game. So it's not like they don't have weapons either. They absolutely do, with DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigma and Tyler Lockett and all this stuff, but I think it was pretty disappointing. I'm going to give him a D.
All right. Well, there you go. D for disappointment. Yeah, not really much else to be said. So, we'll see if they can make the playoffs next year. Hopefully not on a tiebreaker. Moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. How about them Bucks? 10-7 record, 10th overall in the league, but they were eliminated in the wild card round by the Washington Commanders. Who saw that coming? But they finished first in their division, the NFC South, and they hold the 19th pick in the draft. I expected them to go farther in the playoffs. I did. But Baker baked.
Yep.
Had a really good year. I mean, really, I think in my time watching football with Baker since he was drafted, I think he's one of the biggest comeback stories.
Yeah.
Overall. So great for him. Obviously signed that contract last year for 3 years. Mike Evans got his 11th consecutive 1,000 receiving yard season to keep the streak going on the last play of the season. They do have some issues on the defensive side, especially in the secondary. They definitely have to fix that. Their passing defense and their pass rush was one of the worst in the league. Overall, I think I'll also give them a C, because I think losing to the Commanders was disappointing for me. And again, not a knock on the Commanders. Just I thought the Bucs should have won. But that's the beauty of the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a C too. I think it's a little disappointing. I think people expected them to play better than they did. But Baker had a phenomenal year for him. He absolutely did. But the defense was not there, and the rushing game wasn't there either. So they have a lot to work on. Luckily for them, they're in the weakest division in football, so they can still make the playoffs. But I don't know if they'll progress further than what they did, especially now with the Commanders being a team that people are going to start expecting to make the playoffs. Obviously, we still have the Eagles, the Lions, the Niners might be bouncing back in the NFC. So the NFC is starting to get hard too, like the AFC already has been.
Yeah, I agree. The competition in that division can get really tough next year. Teams bounce back. So with the Bucks, they definitely need to put themselves in a position where they get better and get more competitive.
Yeah.
Moving on, the second to last team on the list, the Tennessee Titans. Really disappointing season as well. They finished 3-14, 31st overall in the league. They missed the playoffs. They finished last in the AFC South, but they hold the number 1 pick in the draft. And let me just start by saying, pick a quarterback because Will Levis is not it.
No.
He's a meme generator at this point.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, in the offseason, they try to get big pieces like L'Jarius Sneed from the Chiefs, who was injured for most of the year. They got Calvin Ridley, who didn't have a great year. Signed him from the Jags during the offseason. They fired their GM. I think they fired their coach, or
I don't think so.
no, their coach is still there, but the GM's not, which, okay. But yeah, just a disappointing season. Obviously, a lot of people expect them to be way better than what they were.
Yeah, nothing really much more to say. Titans were just awful, and they were really bad to watch too. They were not. Whenever they played, especially when they played the Jags, no offense, but those games were just so hard to watch. It was just ugly football.
But the
Just
Jags
ugly.
won 10-6.
Yeah, it just not.
Awful.
They have a
football.
long road ahead of them.
But it might be a blessing in disguise. Getting the number 1 overall pick.
Who knows?
Could be very valuable. So maybe. We'll see. And the last team, maybe the biggest surprise of the NFL season, the best for last, maybe? The Washington Commanders. 12-5 overall in a supposedly rebuilding year. 7th in the league. They lost in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. Their first since 1991. And they have the 29th overall pick in the draft. Considering the expectations that they had, that people thought this is just a rebuilding year with Jaden Daniels and the year he had, arguably the best rookie season from a quarterback we have ever seen.
Yeah.
And the pieces that they got and how this team came together, and I think Dan Quinn is a good coach, and he coached this team very well. I think I'm going to go the same route I did with the Broncos, and I'm going to put them in the A tier.
Jeez. Wow.
I think I will. They won their first playoff game in, 18 years? Yeah, I think they have a lot to build on, and I think it was just a fantastic year.
I mean, I agree with everything you said except the A tier. It's only 1 year. It's only 1 year under Jaden Daniels, 1 year under Dan Quinn. CJ Stroud had the best rookie year of all time, and then he had just had a sophomore slump. Jaden Daniels now has arguably the best rookie year of all time. Will he have a sophomore slump? I don't think so, but we didn't think CJ Stroud would have a sophomore slump. So
No, we didn't.
but that's looking into the future. Based off their year, though, yes, they absolutely defied expectations. Jaden Daniels, rookie of the year. Dan Quinn, coach of the year finalist. I'm happy for Commanders fans because it's have not been good in so long. So long.
And I got to say, what a difference ownership makes.
Yeah, 100%. That too. New ownership. Get Dan Snyder out of there. But I want to see more and see if it's actually consistent before I think they're at the same level as the Bills and the Chiefs and the Eagles, arguably the top 3 teams in all of football, with the Eagles being the best. But no, B definitely. I want to see more though before I think they're an A team.
I totally agree with you. And like I said, I'm not going to overreact. We'll see what happens next year. Just based off of this season, in my opinion, I think they're an A team.
All right.
But there you go. There's the list. Mine on the left again. Shay's on the right. I'm really happy with my list.
Yeah, me
I think
too.
it's well balanced. A lot of fails. And again, I think that just speaks to kind of the nutty season that it was.
Yeah.
This might be an unpopular opinion, and I haven't watched football a lot, so, could be inexperienced. I thought the overall quality of football this year, like just from teams that we thought were going to be good, was pretty disappointing. Like, it was a very weird season for me because everything just seemed kind of flip-flopped. Like, teams that I thought were going to do well didn't do well at all. Teams that did well were not expected to do well, and that's not a bad thing. Like, I love when there's parity in the league and teams, come out of the woodwork. But that's just my opinion. Maybe a little bit of a hot take, but
No, it was absolutely a weird year. Definitely one of the weirdest in recent memory for me, for sure. Having watched football my whole life, but I don't think it's disappointing at all. I don't think it's bad at all. Aside from the AFC side, all the same 4 teams being in the divisional round, I think the amount of parity that there is really good, and I'm glad to see the Broncos, these new teams like the Broncos and the Commanders. The Rams have a bounce back year. The Vikings shock everybody. I'm all for it. Even the bad stuff. The Bengals, not being very good and shooting themselves in the foot. It finally caught up to them. The Dolphins, just what the hell happened? Why? And the Panthers, Bryce Young, he's a real quarterback. Yeah, he is. The Chargers, Jim Harbaugh's here. This is a different Chargers team. So I thought it was just another great year, and Eagles landed on top.
yeah, so can't ask for any more than that as an Eagles fan. But that's a wrap. That is a wrap on the NFL season. So you got kind of like a recap of how teams did and all of our rankings. So there you go. Those are our grades from professors at Just Saying. Shay Hutchinson and Jared Stalby. Mr. Dr. Professor.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go. If you guys have watched the entire video, because this will be a long one, thank you so much. And in our hearts and our minds, you're the MVP.
You're the MVP.
So thank you so much for watching, to everybody that did. And as always, don't forget to drop a like on the video if you enjoyed the content. And if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. And also listen to our podcast, because with the YouTube subscription, you get
day early access.
Woo!
But we still love you, Spotify and Apple and Amazon and iHeartRadio, and
Yes, everybody out there.
nothing but love here. All love, baby.
That's right. And if you want to keep up with updates, make sure to follow our socials. That will always be linked in the description. And with that, that concludes the video, and we will see you in the next one.